Există la nivelul comunității europene, să spunem așa, o suită de preocupări în ceea ce privește securitatea datelor, în ceea ce privește data privacy. Auzim din ce în ce mai des opinii din Europa cu privire la faptul că, ok, datele le mutăm în cloud, dar ele trebuie să fie gestionate de către europeni, trebuie să rămână la nivelul Europei, să-mi faceți semn când vă conectați. Și l-am invitat alături de noi pe Francesco Bonfiglio, care în trecut a gestionat proiectul Gaia X, dacă vreunul dintre voi vă aduceți aminte. Continuă să fie apropiat de ceea ce se cheamă Gaia X, dar în momentul de față a lansat ceea ce se cheamă Dynamo, echipa mea de suflet, Dynamo.cloud. N-are legătură cu câinii roșii, Red Dogs, dar are legătură cu un proiect în care vrea să armonizeze tot ceea ce înseamnă infrastructuri, sisteme de aplicații la nivelul european, în beneficiul, să spunem așa, al cetățenilor europeni. Okay, Francesco, so look, thank you very much for being with us. Sorry for delay, but we are Eastern Europeans and we speak a lot. So thank you for being with the CIO Council, Francesco Bonfiglio, CEO of Dynamo, the European cloud alternative. We are eager to listen to you and to hear about this interesting project about digital sovereignty. Please, Francesco.
Thank you very much. I was saying, Hugo, thank you for inviting me, and I was listening to your introduction in Romanian. I'm Italian, so I think I understood most of it. And as far as I understood, it was great. So thank you. And very happy to be in front of all of you. I'm sorry I cannot be there, but I'm in Italy now and I'm moving to Berlin and I could not be physically there. But it's a pleasure to explain what I'm doing. I don't know if it is possible, but I have a little bit of an echo in my earphones. Maybe you can switch off the mic in the room. So some of you, Hugo for sure, know me for my previous role, which was the CEO of Gaia X, and that was a very important project, still important. Gaia X, of course, it's still alive and kicking and continuing in the mission. But when I joined Gaia X, I was one like you. I mean, my experience is in the market. I've been always working in the market, in the business of IT, and then digital, as we used to call it, but which is not very much different from what I used to do already more than 30 years ago. So what I brought in Gaia X, which was supposed to be the most important project to regain digital sovereignty in Europe, was my experience, not in an association, not in politics, but in the market. So the only thing I could bring was my view of what the market needs, what the CIOs of the companies need in order to make their job, what the world of data is and how it has changed in the past decades, and what can be a real opportunity for Europe, not just to win more, but to survive, because the real risk here is that the digital economy of Europe, I'm sorry to say that, and I was hearing the previous speakers, we cannot just focus on the high part of digital, which is data, thinking that data is the only side where we produce value. Unfortunately, digital is an industry, and every industry has got an industrial infrastructure. And we have been very much neglecting the importance of focusing on the digital industry and the digital infrastructure. That's why I have founded Dynamo, and I want to explain you. I will try to share slides, and I hope it works. And I will ask you to let me know in case. It's not working, so let me try again. Yeah, I see, you see my screen now. Fantastic. So that's why I started Dynamo, and I call it the European cloud alternative. Let me explain you what I mean by that. First of all, the context. The context we live today is an emergency, a real emergency. Digital is not just behind your day-by-day business. Digital is behind the Ukraine conflict. Digital is behind national security. Digital is behind the CrowdStrike example of the past summer, where thousands of flights were simply canceled and dozens of airports were stuck, and hospitals as well. And you know what? The response from Microsoft was, well, indeed, actually, this phenomenon touched less than 1% of the installed base. Yes, but that less than 1% of the installed base was touching the life of people. What was, I mean, could literally have killed people. So we need a new awareness of the fact that digital and data economy is an emergency. It's not just an opportunity for business. Data and cloud federation is required because there is no way we can succeed or win or even compare to the competition, which strictly speaking is mainly American, building a European champion. Anybody believing Europe will have a European champion is just naive, because the difference of capitalization between American companies and European companies is of 1,000, or is of the order of thousands, you know, trillions versus billions. It's simply not possible. So there is only one way to make things happen, which is a federative way. And this is not just because of economy, but this is necessary because of data gravity. So data now is everywhere. It wasn't like that 20 years ago when the hyperscalers were started. And centralization of data and compute and storage was possible, and actually was the lever they used. But nowadays, they will continue to be necessary, but they cannot withstand with the reality of distributed data. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to talk about the importance of edge computing. And the same applies to AI. The future of AI is going to be distributed AI. So we need to move into a distributed, decentralized world, and we are totally missing a distributed and decentralized network of cloud services. Proximity is a value. You live in Romania, you have a lot of customers or partners that have a long-lasting relationship. And the same is true in Italy, where I live. The same is true in France and everywhere. The difference is a value in Europe. The fragmentation is not on purpose. The fragmentation is necessary and a value because it provides proximity between providers and customers. Proximity in language, proximity in culture, proximity in all we need to enable the transition, because the transition is not just buying cloud resources. The transition is trusting a partner that understands my business, that speaks my language, that knows my processes, that suggests me what I have to do, and in the end, do it, execute it. So proximity is necessary to enable any digital transition. And last but not least, we are struggling trying to regain control of the economy. And if it is true, and this is what the economists and everybody say, that the future of the economy is going to be intangible economy. Nowadays, the Standard & Poor's 500 lists 90% of their titles as intangible, which means 90% of the real economy is intangible economy, which means 90% of the real economy is data economy. And we are not in control of the control plane of those data platforms. So the need for European companies is to have a new generation of services that are trustworthy, controllable. They need to reduce dependency from single providers. We don't need a new European hyperscaler, because I'm sure you don't want to make a choice between a US versus a European lock-in. And we need a hyper-distributed and scalable generation of services. And of course, we need to reduce the burden of compliance, the burden of partnership with others, the burdens of the limitation of, for example, competing with within a non-competitive market. And last but not least, we need to remember that Europe is made of small, medium business and startups that are extremely innovative, but totally unknown. So what did Europe do in the past 5 years? Remember, we are halfway through the so-called digital decade, which is the European strategy for data. I think they did a good thing. At the beginning, they said, okay, the pillars of the strategy are two. On the one side, we need to create common data spaces. What are common data spaces? Common data spaces are the digitalization of value chains. In other words, they are the digital twins of a supply chain, of a value chain, of an industrial ecosystem. To do that, you need to create a data federation. So you need to federate multiple subjects that decide to share data for the common good, to implement, business cases that provides common benefit. And you need to have rules to share data one another. On the other side, we need to have cloud federations, if you want, cloud spaces on which the data spaces should sit. And the cloud spaces must be a convergence between central cloud and the edge, this concept of computing continuum. Now, I think we did pretty well in the first slide. And I spent a lot of time myself when I was in GaiaX and preaching all over the world the importance of data spaces. And I'm a true believer data spaces are important. But I would be silly if I believed that we can build data spaces and build value and economy on top of data without being in control of the platforms that handle them. So we have not been good in developing cloud spaces and cloud federations. I think we have failed totally, and I have to be very blunt. Europe needs to act immediately on protecting the physical infrastructure. Because in the meanwhile we're talking, my dear friends, I tell you one thing. I always look at what the hyperscalers do because they are great. They're just great companies. They look ahead. They know how the world goes. So in the meanwhile, we are talking about the future of AI, how to build the next generation of high-performance computing in order to train the LLM of the future, which in my opinion will not be so many, so we better focus on inference and small models. But apart of that, the hyperscalers are buying every single available square meter of data center in Europe. They are buying every single gigawatt of energy. So this is the most ancient tactic of colonization. This is exactly a digital colonization of Europe. Once upon a time, they used to buy tea fields in India. Now they are buying data centers in Europe and energy. So after they reach in their objective, in the meanwhile, we're talking about regulations. They will win the game and it will be game over. So where do we stand? On the good side, data economy is growing. Like I said, data economy is real. And the cloud market is growing, and that's fantastic. On the bad side, the European cloud service provider are dying because in 3 years, between 17 and 20, they lost 3/4 of their market share, from 26 to below 10%, which means we have a window of 3 to 5 years before our digital supply industry will become a reseller of American technology. And as you see in the politics, this is kind of happening. So we are starting to talk about collaborations and partnership at university level to train not just on technologies, but on specific industrial technologies. And we see agreement to build data centers in every country from the hyperscaler. So it's a good thing, but we are losing control of the market. What are the alternatives? Well, somebody says there is no alternative. Actually, everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. Hyperscalers are strong, but of course they are less controllable, they have less proximity, they are more centralized, they are not immune from other jurisdictions, and they have closed proprietary systems. Somebody says the Europeans are too small, and of course they are small. They have weaknesses, but they have also strengths. And if you look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the European versus the Americans, interestingly enough, They are totally complementary. So we are strong where they are weak, and they are strong where we are weak. What other alternative exist? Well, we do have the European project, yes, like Gaia-X, like EuroHPC, the IPSI, the important project for common European interest for the cloud infrastructure. But in reality, their strength is that they increase awareness and they focus on compliance and enforcement. They basically are trying to define standards and blueprints. But the weakness is that they are not acting in the market. They cannot act in the market. And if you have a problem in the market and you don't act in the market, it's useless. So there is a lot of examples of why we need to do that, and I don't need to explain to you what the Cloud Act is. You know that the Cloud Act is not at all something solved. It's a very existing law that basically conflicts with the GDPR. So maybe not all of you know, but we have not one, but two sentences of the Court of Justice of Europe that declare that using American platforms in Europe is illegal. Nonetheless, everybody's doing it. Other example, should I talk about Broadcom acquisition of VMware and what happened in the past 6 months? Well, everybody was astonished, but this is the very normal mechanism of the lock-in. You reach a level of market penetration such that you are an undisputed leader, and at that point you lock in your customers, and at that point you can decide the rules of the game. And despite everybody saying, oh, we need to get rid of VMware, we need to find alternative. No way, VMware will stay for long, 5 to 10 years, because 90% of the virtualization in the world is made on VMware. You know why? Because 80%, if not more, is not cloud native or cloud ready. And you know what? You are handling 80% of applications and databases that cannot be put on the public cloud, or you don't want to put in the public cloud, or you cannot afford to do that. So VMware will stay and will be not the last lock-in. Another example, okay, the CrowdStrike. Oh, that was easy. It was a simple failed update deployed in thousands and thousands of files that are updated continuously every day, and we have no idea what happens. We cannot live in a world like that, where this type of software failures can affect our life. We cannot afford that. So what Dynamo does is pretty simple. Instead of thinking about a new European champion, you can imagine one company, one Romanian company, or one German company, or an Italian one, buying all the others to become the biggest cloud service provider in Europe. First of all, this is impossible, but imagine for a second this would happen. What would you do? You acquire multiple data centers in multiple regions, multiple personnels, different portfolios, different technology, different cloud management platform, different processes for sales, different catalogs. So you undertake a huge and enormous job of assessment, due diligence, assessment, and reorganization of the assets, reorganization of the offering, reorganization of the infrastructure. As an effect, in not less than 3 years, you will lose 20% of your best customers and another 20% of your best people. And maybe you will get back to the point where the sum of the revenues of the companies you have acquired are equal to the starting point. So I asked myself, why don't we do the same without a merger and acquisition process? So Dynamo implements the concept of a cloud virtual service provider. So virtually a single provider that aggregates anyone who wants to join, and of course has the credentials to do it, automating all the processes that are needed to act like a single provider, which means all the participants of Dynamo belong to a commercial federation of European providers only. It is a true marketplace, but it's a B2B marketplace, so we do not sell to their customer, but we sell between them. Everyone can resell the services of the others. To the external eyes, Dynamo is transparent. It's like every participant owns Dynamo, alike in a virtual merger is like you have acquired all the others, and not Dynamo has acquired you. And in this way, we can achieve the critical mass, the capacity, the richness of portfolio that no single one has in Europe. This model is not competing because it's a win-win. You can keep selling. You as a provider of services, you can keep selling your own services. But when you don't have enough services, or you don't have the services to fulfill the demand of your customers, of your demand, you can augment and scale using the Dynamo portfolio. We automate all you need to do. We reduce to zero the cost of being compliant to the European legislation. We reduce to zero the cost of making partnership with others because it's complicated. We eliminate the barriers to virtually create a seamless integration across all these providers. And this model, different from the merger and acquisition model, can grow exponentially. It never stops because it becomes a one-stop place in Europe where we can attract everybody, from the startups to the large companies. Here you see how it works. So everybody decides to participate, of course, and if they participate, they have to sign a common master service agreement. And if they can decide what services they publish, which means they make available to others to resell. And also everybody decides what services from others they want to resell. But every single participant retains the relationship with the end user. So they are strengthened, they become more relevant, they are not diminished, and they can leverage on a big brand behind them. This is a simple use case. Nobody has enough offering to fulfill the demand of their customer, but now you give up and you sell only the services you have, and maybe you involve a system integrator, which will involve somebody else, typically an hyperscaler, which has got them all. Tomorrow, you will be able to resell services from other partners. You have nothing to lose. You retain your customer relation. You can increase your win rate, and of course, you can increase your relevance and make more revenues, more sales, and more territories. Now, we match the needs of the CEOs of the companies because what the companies are looking for is sustainability, anti-fragility, transformation, and optimization. And to do that, you need something like Dynamo, because nothing like the existing solution can fulfill these objectives. And of course, we meet the needs of the CSPs because they achieve more credibility, visibility, they can reach new market, they can enrich the offering, and they can reduce the barriers of compliance. These are the rules of participation. I will be fast and I'll take another 5 minutes if you allow me. Basically, to participate to Dynamo, you must be a European company. You must own your own services. You must run your services within the European territory, and you must be immune from non-European jurisdictions. That's to preserve the ecosystem of Europe and ensure that you can find and buy pre-selected, pre-qualified services from Dynamo, like nowhere else. It is an ecosystem where everybody can influence, not just the providers, but the end users. So you, as CIOs, may say, yes, we like this idea, because actually we need an alternative because we don't have any. And if you support the idea of Dynamo, your suppliers will know about Dynamo and will come to Dynamo, and we can create together this snowball effect that we need to aggregate this fragmented European power that we have. Of course, we will not be replacing any hyperscaler, but it's time to make a data strategy based on use cases, and you will soon realize that for some data you can still use, of course, any other platform you might want and continue to use the hyperscalers, and the hyperscalers are extremely good. But there is some data where you need a different solution. So either way, you don't use any solution, or you need an alternative, and that's the alternative we are trying to build. Last but not least, one important thing is that we are not just aggregating solution. We are enabling the shift to the next generation of cloud services, which is going to be distributed, which is going to be federated, which is going to be based on a concept of tech, of RegTech, of automation of the regulation compliance, and not wasting human effort to understand compliance, which is based on service composition instead of system integration, which is more based on open source, which is based on liquid infrastructures where you can really glue together different type of computing nodes like virtually one, And we are implementing all these things you see here inside Dynamo. So besides the vertical pillars, which are the participants of Dynamo providing their solutions and reselling one another, we are providing horizontal layers to truly and pragmatically provide for the interoperability that the regulation asks for, but nobody provides. And we do it because nobody can do it by themselves. Now, these are the typical target participants that we are looking at. And I know you might ask who is already in Dynamo. I can tell you that the biggest companies are already backing us up. I'm talking about Ionos in Germany, OVH in France, Aruba in Italy, Gigas in Spain, and many others. But there will be announcements coming soon. But this is just to give you a snapshot of the companies we have in Europe. And imagine we have a list of 500 and we cannot reach them all. And this is a slide I like to show. When many people say, yes, and Francesco, you are a visionary, you are the Don Quixote of the digital in Europe. But let's be, let's be frank. This will never fly. We cannot compare to the hyperscalers. So I asked Claude, which is my preferred Gen AI prompt, to tell me what are the key European alternatives to the hyperscalers top sellers. So you can see the prompt, you can do it yourself. And this is the answer. Of course, you see that the top sellers are compute, storage, EC2, S3, etc., etc. And you see that there is no single European provider that fits that provides them all. But you can see the breadth and the spread of offering that we have from open source and leading European companies. So two aspects. The alternative solutions are there and are even better in some cases than the ones provided by the hyperscalers, and are localized and are supported by professional services, etc. But we need to glue them together in order to really create an alternative. And this is possible. But the only thing is that together we stand, divided we fall. And here I will pause myself and give back to you, Hugo, and I hope I was more or less in time.
Just in 30 seconds, please, we have a question from the audience. So is this project backed up or supported, if it is not backed up, by the European authorities?
Is not backed up in terms of funding. It's a private company, and the reason is that when I left GaiaX, I understood the only way to create something for Europe is to make it private, because the law prevents from investing public money into non-competitive, let me say, initiatives, which I find ridiculous because we are not living in a competitive market. Still, I understood that was the only way to do it. But it's backed in terms of spirit. Of course, when I spoke to the European Commission, and you can imagine in my network, I can speak to the highest rank of the local governments. I've been also talking to the Romanian government, of course, the Italian, the German, the French, and the Commission. They all said, well, Francesco, go ahead, because this is exactly what we need, and this is what we wanted. But we could not do it. And yeah, but they are ready. They are very happy about
very much, Francesco Bonfiglio. We're looking forward to seeing you in Bucharest, because as far as I know, you're traveling pretty often, and we will welcoming you at CIO Council to discuss in detail this project. Who knows, maybe we can contribute sometime. Thank you very much, Francesco.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.